Hospital Porter's Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Herpanwo TV, and welcome to this video wasn't sure I'd make or not, but I did decide to quite spontaneously. What it is, right, there was a new film was released just a couple of days ago, and everybody's talking about it. Everybody's talking about it, and everyone's asking me about it. I wrote a written review on Herpanwo Voice of this new film, but I thought, well, maybe I should do not a watch party, but do a review stroke live stream about it. So I was thinking about what to do about it. I thought I'll just do a live stream and and we'll talk about the film and then share thoughts with the rest of you. And I thought that it'd be easier if I do a review first and then do the live stream maybe a couple of days later. Now, I'm not going to do a full watch party with introduction, review, live stream, all that palaver. It's going to be something a lot more simple because I really need to get it in before Christmas. So that's what I'll do. You may be pleased to see that my webcam, my old webcam, is now working again. So I might not have to buy a new one after all. But it's probably sort of like on and off. So I'll probably will have to at some point. But as long as it keeps working, I will keep using it. I might have to switch to the old webcam, to the spare webcam at some point. All right, just to let you know. The background you see behind me is a scene from the film we're talking about. It's a scene where a guy's driving along in his car, and a plane drops these little red flyers all over him. That's what it's about. The film you probably guessed the film I'm talking about is, like I say, the one everyone's talking about. It's Leave the World Behind. This is a film that's just been released, directed by Sam Esmail, and it's based on a novel written in 2020 by Ruman Alam. I think you're going to see a lot of what you might call dystopian or apocalyptic fiction coming out of the lockdown period. I mean, because this is, I suppose, is a kind of a dystopian and apocalyptic kind of film. And yeah, it's I think you do get this. You go through periods of hardship. Authors, film directors, we tend to, and I'm saying we because I'm one of us. We tend to create very dark, pessimistic, and sort of harsh, unpleasant kind of literature. We do. For example, the book of The Road, and the film that came from it was made in just after the 2008 stock market crash, where everyone was predicting economic Armageddon. Now, this film is it's actually something that caused an explosion of activity on the online conspiracy sphere. It's unbelievable. It's like I said, everyone was contacting me wanting to know all about it. So what is it about? Well, it starts off very mundanely. This film, it stars a kind of it's got 5 major characters. There's a couple played called Clay and Amanda. Clay is played by Ethan Hawke. Amanda's played by Julia Roberts, who I must say has developed into quite a nice vintage. There's also they've got 2 children called Archie and Rose, and it's like a normal sort of middle class kind of family. But from the very first scene, you get an impression of what they're like. I've got some stills actually. I want to show you. Just want to show you these stills. So I'll just open picture viewer. Yeah, I'm not going to show you any video footage at all. It's just no bloody point, because immediately I get like one of these ridiculous copyright strikes. So I'll stick to just stills. But I've got a good selection of stills here from the film, which I think you might like. So, right, StreamYard, share screen. And there you see one right there. That is this is in the sort of title sequence. You get like these pictures. There's several pictures of the Earth from space, and then you get Amanda here. I fucking hate people. She's in this very cold. She says in this very cold, chilled way. Yeah. Amanda is extremely misanthropic, deeply. I mean, it comes out. She's very much. I mean, it's. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think she makes Slaxer look like Happy the Dwarf. She really does. She's extremely misanthropic. I mean, it's funny because there's another character called Ruth who doesn't get on with Amanda at first, but they find an affinity, and they find an affinity through their shared misanthropy, because they both hate people. And there's this quite moving scene where she says, "Oh, I agree with everything you say," and but Amanda's going, "As much as I hate people, I'd love to have them back." And I kind of know how she feels. I haven't. I suppose I haven't. You see, because as you know, I've spoken before, especially in my hospital portering videos and on the Gas Banner radio show and on the HPWA blog. I've lost count of the number of people I know who just want to use me, exploit me, abuse me for their own amusement or profit. And I've lost count of how many they are. They're probably the majority of people in my life. I would assume will do that if given the chance. And that is sad. What makes me different is I suppose I don't want to do. I don't understand why someone would want to do that to another person. I don't. All I know is that they want to do it to me, and they want to do it to others. And I've been trying to find ways of dealing with that. The dignity statement is a part of it. I've been trying to find ways of protecting myself. I also, as you know from my video, Stefan Molyneux, the Nice Guys video, and the other one. I did 2 videos about this in reply to Stefan Molyneux. The other one was called, oh God, I can't remember. Anyway, I explain how I often go out of my way to protect other people as well if I think they're vulnerable. Whereas most people will just say, well, it's their fault for being who they are. It's dog eat dog world, man. The whole dog eat dog thing I'll come back to. But anyway, this is what's awful is that Amanda is like, she's this misanthrope, but she's also incredibly bossy. She's married to this guy called Clay, played by Ethan Hawke. And she takes the lead on everything. She takes the lead. She bosses him around. And he's very weak and Clay is an incredibly weak and subservient man. He just allows her to push him around, talk down to him in front of other people. And he also finds refuge in denial and mindless optimism. And in this way, he's so like my own father. It's unbelievable. It's really, he's of all the fictional characters I've ever come across, he's probably the one most like my dad. It really, really is. And it's painful to watch that in a way. I must say, it's painful to watch that. She does things like he secretly smokes behind her back. I mean, obviously, if she's married to him, you can smell if someone smokes. Their body gives their breath, and their body indeed gives off a certain smell, one that I find quite unpleasant. But there's other things like he when at one point when they're on holiday, because they do go on holiday, they're kind of being nice to each other, and he sort of suggests that they make love, and she sort of like she smiles thinly and looks away and walks off. It's just a nasty thing to do to your partner if you're a couple. I mean, if you're not in the mood, you can just say you're not in the mood, but it shows that she doesn't think a lot of him, and I suppose he's not the sort of person I could respect. But I think he's one of the people I would try to defend if someone else was trying to harm him. But I suppose if he was my father, I'd find it frustrating. I find I don't. With my own dad, there's no malevolence in my dad, none at all. But there's just weakness, which I find frustrating. I know a lot of people who complain that their father was too aggressive. My dad's got the opposite problem. It's a complete absence of aggression, including the healthy, natural aggression I think people, especially men need. So what happens? Amanda, in her usual way, she bosses him around. She just announces she's taking the entire family off on holiday. She's hired a holiday home, which is it's an Airbnb, whatever where someone leases their own home out to others, and they head off on holiday. And they drive off in the car, and this is it's strange because this is them in the car. There's 4 of them in the car. I'll show you the photo. This one photo here I'll show you. This is one. This is a still from the film, as you can see here. This is This is Rose, the little girl called Rose. The boy's 16. He's called Archie. Rose is 13. She's incidentally, Rose is played by the same actress who was in Utopia. She played. I forgot the name of the young girl in Utopia. That is the Amazon Utopia, not the original Channel 4 one. She's sitting here watching Friends on her slab, or whatever you call it, on the iPad or whatever you call it. Archie's playing a computer game. Amanda in the front passenger seat, she's chatting on the phone to her friend. And Clay, driving, is just listening to the car radio. So all four of them are in the car sitting together, and they're all in their own world. And there's a lot of comment. I suppose that is a commentary on modern life, which the kind of life that maybe our technology gives us, which has maybe taken away the way we interact with each other. And indeed, when a new character is introduced, he says, "Oh, you know me because I've been emailing you. Oh, if only we lived in the old days before the internet, where we could meet each other face to face, or at least talk on the phone. We'd recognise each other." That's interesting. So that's another sort of sign of the times, which is there's a lot of commentary on things like that. Now this is interesting because Rose loves the TV series Friends, even though she's probably a little bit young for it. Friends is an American sitcom, and like a lot of American sitcoms, it's not very good. This is why the Americans love our sitcoms. This is why they're always importing our stuff. They love Absolutely Fabulous, Red Dwarf, etc. They love all our sitcoms. But she asks her dad, she says, "Can we go to the Friends coffee shop?" And her dad says, "Look, Rose, it doesn't exist. It's not a real place." And another character, Ruth, later on says that Friends is nostalgic for a time that never existed. And maybe a lot of media is escapist like that. And Rose at one point just says, so her brother asks her, "Why do you like Friends so much?" And she just says, "It makes me happy. I care about them." A lot of the anguish Rose gets into during the course of the film is that she can't watch the end of the episode she was watching. But she's a sweet girl. She's a very sweet girl. And this is where most of the drama takes place. It's this house. It's just this little house here. Oops, there you go. You can see that. This is a lovely house. Actually, it's a beautiful place. You see them parked up there. It's in this little seaside town where there's a beach nearby and everything. They've gone on holiday to the seaside. Let's get me notes. Get to me notes. Yes, they head off to the seaside. Everything looks quite normal for the first 20 minutes or so. You think it's going to be some kind of domestic bliss. This sort of domestic bliss service, domestic bliss kind of, but domestic bliss drama or something like that. You just think it's going to be that for a while. But there's a few strange things. You like immediately, even when they're sort of just getting settled into the house, sinister music plays in the background, and you also notice something. I mean, this is a film full of hidden symbols. It's like I don't know what it means. Because even the title itself has a double meaning: "Leave the world behind," and this comes up. It has a kind of double meaning. As the story develops, you understand what it means to leave the world behind. And there's all kinds of little. This has become famous. I mean, all the things. It's funny enough. Every time I looked, I sort of noticed something strange or unusual, a little detail of the film. I just Googled it, and it was the first thing that came up. Everyone is talking about the film and all the little Easter eggs in it. It has loads of hidden messages and symbolism. For example, I mean, I didn't look close enough to notice this, but apparently the wall. You see, this picture apparently changes. This picture here. This is just a wall picture in the house. I mean, I say picture. It looks like someone's just thrown some coal tar against a whiteboard. I mean, I don't know why this is called art, but it is. There you go. It's if some sucker will buy it for £1 million at Sotheby's, I'll make one. But that apparently changes at one point. Yeah, changes. This is one of the hidden symbols. There's hidden messages and symbols all through this film. And I said, you Google it, and there's loads of them. I just been Googling it, like when I was preparing this. I'll just give you a few examples of it. But I've been Googling it the whole time, and loads of people online and social media, especially on Reddit. There's entire subreddits now just spotting all the little quick quirks inside it, all the little subliminals. Some of them are subliminal, some of them are just like out the way messages, and trying to make them and trying to work out what they mean and things like that. So it seems to be a very deep film in that sense. Now, everything seems normal. Like I said, they go off to the beach, and I'm beginning to think this is going to be a boring film. This is going to be a bloody boring film. So they go off to the beach. They go off the beach just to spend the day sort of sunning themselves on the beach, as you see here. Here they are walking to the beach. It looks like a lovely beach, blue sky, blue sea. But look, there's a ship in the distance. There's a ship. I wish I could show you some video of it, actually, because some of the video is actually quite good. But you get a copyright strike so easily these days. It's not bloody worth it. You can go and look it up for yourself. But anyway, this is when things start to get weird because the ship runs aground on the beach. It grounds itself on the coast. It's heading straight towards them. Eventually, it literally runs aground on the beach, just like one of those, like the old scrap merchants in India and Bangladesh, when they take these ships to be broken down and they just drive them up onto the beach, and then the breakers just go on board and like take them apart bit by bit by hand. That's quite a big industry in that part of the world. What's interesting now, a lot of people mentioned the ship is called White Lion. Now, what does that mean? Well, it is a white lion in heraldry refers to the Scottish monarchy. And I don't know, obviously there is no King of Scotland now. The crowns were united. I think it was 1705 or something like that. But it's interesting. It's called White Lion. Maybe the symbolism there I don't quite understand. And you see a bit of Clay's denial, because Clay he's like sunbathing on the beach, and his family is saying, Clay, that ship, it's coming towards us, mate. It's coming towards us. And Rose, the little girl, seems to be the most perceptive member of the family. Immediately she says, that ship's coming towards us. And he says, that's all right, it'll turn around in a minute. There's a big harbour near here, biggest in the world. And so they wait, and the ship comes closer, and they say, it's all right, it's not going to. And Clay's just going, everything's going to be absolutely fine. It's not going to hit us. It's not going to crash. And this is what I call denial and mindless optimism, which is another feature of my own father. He does that. He just pretends. He pretends everything's fine when things are not, and maybe he thinks that if he does that for hard enough, things will turn into the way he wants them. I'm not having a go at my dad. He never watches my channel anyway. I can say whatever I like about him, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, it's just one. I don't dislike my dad. I love him deep down. He's very different from my mum. Very different indeed. Anyway, so that's what happens. The ship runs aground. It's quite a spectacular thing. And then it turns out like one of the policemen, when the beach is being evacuated, one of the policemen said that ships all over the coast are breaking down and they're grounding due to navigation breakdowns. Now, and then you find out later on that the TV and the internet are off, and then there's a film the film then switches to the space again, outer space. You see a satellite kind of going off course. Now, this is what's interesting here is the way that the policeman talks about ships grounding. It's almost like, it's like whales, whales and dolphins beaching, but this is where I suspect the setting of this film is near future rather than because it looks strictly contemporary, but it could be near future. And the reason is because in the film, this is interesting, the ships, because you see ships, you see aircraft, and you have autonomous cars as well crashing, and they have no human override. So you see the ship crashing, you see the ship grounding itself on the beach as if the navigation crew on the bridge can't do anything about it because the ship's completely autonomous. Now, that's actually not the case. Ships, aircraft have autopilot. Now, we know a lot of cars have that as well, but they still have human override. So in the present day, that's not the case. But I do know there are plans to make it so in the works. There are already like autonomous cars that just don't have drivers. There's a bus that goes from Didcot to the Harwell laboratories. I know this from when I went to bases. It's an autonomous bus. It has no driver. Yes, that's very strange. Right. Deer. Let's talk about this. Is quite spooky. This is really quite creepy, right? These are the deer. The deer go crazy. Well, they apparently they start behaving like dogs, going up to people. You're not sure whether they're friendly or not. I mean, they don't actually do anything bad. They just sort of hang around people like this, staring at them. This scene, this picture, this frame reminds me very much a little bit of the people in masks in Eyes Wide Shut. The rows and rows of people in masks. If you remember that shot from Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, there's a lot of Kubrick in this. There's a lot of Kubrick in this film, I must say, in terms of style. I do think and that reminds me of The Ring 2. Do you remember The Ring 2? That's not as good as the original Ring film, but there's a sequel called The Ring 2 where a car breaks down and these deer come out and start attacking the car. But Clay says, "Oh, so deer are a good omen in Amerindian mythology." He says, "Yeah." So it does remind me a bit that this scenes of the deer, because they were obviously animated deer, but the animation's a lot better because I think The Ring 2 was about 20 years old. And other things like flamingos start appearing in the area. This is set in New York, USA. Of course, where it's not a flamingo's normal habitat. But then you hear a noise. You hear on the news, oh, there's been a disaster in the south, which of course flamingos I think live in Florida and places like that. And so the flamingos start appearing in the start appearing in the whole, you start appearing and in the swimming pool and things like that, as if they've gone off course. There's also one scene where people talk about cicadas because, of course, in many parts of the world, including that area, you hear this nighttime chorus of cicadas, but you don't hear them. And one of the characters says, "Oh, strange, we don't hear any cicadas." And at one point, Ruth, another character, says, "Are the animals trying to warn us?" And it's funny because animal behavior can sometimes be a warning. For example, the Asian tsunami of 2006. Lots of wild animals left the nature reserves just before the tsunami hit. How do they know? Things like that. Yeah, it's interesting that. And then there's two new characters arrive. This is GH. His name's George, actually, and this is Ruth, his daughter. And you can see she got the number 96 tattooed on her left shoulder, and a lot of people are talking about that as well. What does that mean? But yeah, these two turn up. They're very posh people. I mean, he's like a classical musician as well. He's a stockbroker as well and a classical musician. And it's their house. It turns out it's their house. Yeah, they're the owners of the house the family leased, but they found themselves stranded. Now, I made a mistake there, and probably you might make the same mistake looking at that image, that GH was played by Wesley Snipes. It's actually not. It's an actor called Mahershala Ali. So he looks a little bit like Wesley Snipes, but he's not actually Wesley Snipes. So I was looking forward to the vampires, but I don't think you don't see them in this movie, unfortunately. So no one knows. People are talking about what the 96 tattoo means. Again, if you Google it, you find all the subreddits all about it. What's interesting is all four characters are very different here. GH is very polite and urbane, whereas Ruth she's belligerent and suspicious and sarcastic. In fact, she's obviously that I'm going to be on the lookout for cultural Marxism, and this comes up an awful lot. I'll come on to that in a minute. Clay is warm, he's welcoming, he sort of responds to GH's sort of avuncular nature, but Amanda is suspicious, and she's asking questions, and she thinks, "What are these people? What are they?" And of course, Ruth says, "Oh," she hints that, "Oh, that's the pot calling the kettle black," meaning, "Oh, it's because we're black, isn't it?" And it's the usual thing, Both of them are both the newcomers are stressed because GH's wife and Ruth's mother, they don't know where she is. Ruth and GH are basically alone. The mother went off on a business trip to Morocco. Apparently, she's an art dealer, and she was due to fly back, but they don't know where her plane is. And with all the communications down, what if the plane navigation failed? And also, you see in one scene a plane crashing because its navigation's failed, just like the ship did. You see it crashing on the beach. And there's a very dramatic scene, actually, with GH on the beach. His name's George, apparently, but he calls himself GH. And you see this plane crashing on the beach. And again, no human override. That's not realistic, but it might be in a few years. In which case, if there's some kind of massive technological breakdown in the future, it might be far worse than if it happened today. But you'd still, there's no, at this point, no one has a clue about what's causing this. All they know is all the internet's off, TV's down, phone lines down, social media gone, everything. But GH and Ruth will think their mum's dead. They think the plane might have crashed in the sea. They're not sure. Funnily enough, you are introduced to the fact very early on, because there are private conversations between GH and Ruth, that they are who they say they are. So that it's revealed to you very quickly that they are honest people, and indeed, it's pretty obvious they're going to be honest, aren't they? I mean, in this day and age, you can't have people of that demographic playing villains. You can't. The bad guys are always white in modern cinema. It's a rule. So I knew the moment I saw them they were going to be good guys. Funny enough, like you get like these like moving shots between this interesting effect. These moving shots, you know, where you get like the camera's on one level and it goes down, and there's like a black stripe across the camera indicating the floor, and you go down and there's the lower floor. You get a couple of shots like this in this film, but instead of the black stripe, you actually see between the floorboards. You see like pipes and wires and dusty and cobwebs and things. And even I think I spotted a couple of mice. I mean, the kind of thing that you would get in between floorboards. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Now this is interesting. This is the film. This is the book. There's a very brief shot here. And again, everyone is talking about this. This is the book. This is the bedside book that Amanda has here. Beach Towel. Beach Towel, it's called. And it is by someone called Otto Irving. And if you Google Beach Towel Otto Irving, what do you get? Well, the first thing you get is you get the Reddit saying, what does this mean? What's this? What's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of this in this particular film? I don't know if this is a real book or not. I mean, I can't find a reference to it. I cannot see. I've been looking and I can't find any kind of like. I can't find it on Amazon or Goodreads or anywhere like that. But if this book exists, then obviously it's going to become as much a bestseller as My Pet Goat. Oh, there's slightly higher reading age though, higher than My Pet Goat. Although My Pet Goat's reading age was a little bit high for George W. Bush, but it's like an adult book, I think. Obviously, otherwise Amanda wouldn't be reading it. That's another of these little things that what happened is I think maybe people might be analyzing the film too much now, and they might be seeing meaning where meaning doesn't exist. That's what I think's a possibility. Then we have a situation where you see another part of Clay. Clay seems to be adapting to this new world. I mean, this lady turns up here. Clay goes to drive into town. He hopes to buy a newspaper to find out what's happening. Of course, the shops will be open, won't they? Because I mean, it's never occurred to them that this civilization could collapse that they live in. And he's driving along, and suddenly this lady is shouting to him from the side of the road, and he pulls over. And this is this lady here. Yeah, this is. Let me just find out more about her. There's also, interestingly, behind her, there's an abandoned tractor in the field, which indicates her. Now we don't know who this is, but in the credits, she does actually have a name. She's called Salvadora, and her actress is called Vanessa Aspilaga. And no one knows exactly what she said because she speaks Spanish. She comes up and she yells at him in fear. She's crying and she's begging in Spanish. And you don't know what she's saying, but she's saying this. She says, "Please, sir, I need help. Please, please, sir." It's been translated by somebody. "Thank God I found someone. I'm trying to get back to my home. I'm lost. I've been walking for a while. I need to use your phone. Your phone. You're the first person I've seen all day. We have to get out of here. I just saw a plane that was spraying red gas in the vicinity. I saw some deer, more than 50. They're coming out of the woods. Please, I need to go home, sir. A military plane appeared and fled. There's no one around. Is it a chemical attack?" No, it turns out, like, for people who can speak Spanish, she's actually not. She doesn't have any vital information. She's in the same situation as Clay and the others. But she's more frightened, probably because she's not as dependent on technology. I think she's Hispanic. Maybe she's Mexican. In the book this is based on, it turns out she's GH's maid. because I just looked at the synopsis of the book, which is very similar. I've never read the book. But what's clear is she's asking for help. Now Clay can't speak Spanish, but he sort of just abandons her there, which is which the symbology of that. Firstly, it indicates that Clay can be ruthlessly pragmatic when he wants to be, and I mean, we meet another character later on who's even more so, but he later on feels guilty about that, and I understand that, because I mean, she's not, obviously she's a middle-aged woman who's no real danger. You can see that she is frightened and she's upset. I would have rescued her if I'd been driving that car. I'd have just tried to communicate as best as I can, because she can't speak English, I can't speak Spanish. I'd just taken her somewhere, I'd just done that. But according to I looked at the Mary Sue, this magazine, and for them, they've analysed it. It's forcing us to think about what we would do if we couldn't just pull out Google Translate, because of course, what he might well do in this day and age, he might just get his phone out and switch on Google Translate, and then get her to just say something into this, which it would then speak to you in your own language. It would then speak. You would say, "Well, this is what she's saying," but you can't do that because nothing's working anymore. The electronics aren't working anymore. It's interesting, because Mary Sue goes on about racism, and says that Amanda is openly racist, and well, they see that. I mean, the white people are all portrayed as bad. I should point out that this whole production is partly one of the distributors is Higher Ground Productions, which of course is I mentioned Higher Ground Productions before because they're run by Barack and Michelle Obama. And they're the ones, as I explained in a previous show, who are currently messing up the Betty and Barney Hill story, turning it into a horrible anti-white, blaxploitation film. But I don't think, you see, I think it's hinted that Amanda is a racist, but then Amanda is openly racist, and Clay is just he's racist, but he doesn't know it. Because of course, there's no such thing as a white person who's not racist, is it? We're all racist, even if it's only tacitly. We don't understand our own racism. You see, it's deep down inside of us. You may say you've got black friends and things like that, but you're just saying that to cover up your innate white racism. Huh? Amanda is not racist. She doesn't hate black people. She hates all races equally. She hates white and black people equally. Right. Oh yeah. This is interesting. So we leave behind Salvadora, and now this is interesting. Look, this is what happens is Rosie and Archie go exploring as kids do. They come across a shed. It's not in the back garden. It's just a few hundred feet beyond the back garden. And you find that someone's been sleeping in the shed. They've made a bed out of leaves, and they're kind of just sleeping there, probably a tramp or somebody. But you never find out who it is, and that's a plot line that's left open. In fact, a lot of the plots are simply left open in this film. I'll say more about it at the end, but there is no real end to this film. It's a strange one. It is anyway. So who's sleeping there? It's an unfinished plot, and then there's this really dramatic and alarming scene here. GH goes to find one of his neighbors. He goes to visit one of his neighbors who he knows has a satellite phone. It's not dependent on the cellular networks. He can't get a signal on the satellite phone, which indicates the satellites are down as well. In fact, you find that out earlier on because you see a satellite literally going adrift in space. But then he comes across what he thinks is like a wristwatch lying in the sand. Now, I won't show you any more of the visuals here because it's actually quite disturbing. It's a dead body of a pilot. And he sees other dead bodies lying around and pieces of a wreckage of a plane. And he realizes a plane has crashed here. A plane has crashed. And it's crashed because its navigation went off. Again, it's like the pilots can't control anything. And funny enough, there's another like hidden message here. You see a passenger sitting in the seat. A lot of people spotted this. I didn't the first time. I can see it now. And then what happens next is it goes back to Clay, Ethan Hawke's character, He leaves the old Hispanic woman, and he starts driving along, and then this plane starts dropping these red flyers on the car. As you see, he's terrified here. He's not the bravest man at the best of times, and here he is yelling his head off as he thinks it may be a chemical attack or something. But this plane is dropping these flyers. It's strange that, yeah. Mm. Um, and you get like a little bit of he gets a little bit of snippets on the radio. It turns out, and it's announced that hackers are responsible for the network failures, and you never find out who they actually are. I mean, some people say they ask another character later on, and they say it's the Russians, it's the North Koreans, it's the Chinese, depending on which character you ask. But the flyers appear to be Iranian propaganda. They say "Death to America" on it, and you see like there's writing on it, which is in Farsi, the Iranian language. So you think, oh, it must be Iran doing this. This must be attacked by Iran. They've hacked the American network because they're planning an attack, an invasion or something. And then you find out, but then another character says, oh, they've been dropping these same flyers in California and they have Korean written on them. So what it is disinformation, which is interesting. These flyer drops appear to be disinformation. Now, this is one of the most obvious pieces of this here is one of the most obvious pieces of symbolism. You can see there. You see these two. This is Archie and Rose. Archie has this T-shirt on, and Rose has that T-shirt on. Now, there's of all the talk. There's so much talk in this film, in the online commentary and the reviews about hidden messages and symbolism. This is not a mistake. Archie's wearing an Obey T-shirt. Now, Obey is inspired. Is a brand that's known to be inspired by John Carpenter's They Live. Do you remember the watch party we did for They Live? And Rose has NASA on hers. Now that's not accidental. That is very reminiscent of the costumes worn in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Do you remember the little boy? He has the rocket on. He has the NASA rocket on there. Archie actually is not. I must say, he's not a very good older brother to Rose. I would say he's not really. He doesn't reassure her. He just says when she says, "Oh, I want to watch Friends," he says, "Oh, you shouldn't care about that." Things like that. He's a little bit. He's not very protective of her. Now, this is an interesting scene. This is an interesting scene here. This is you see is Ruth and GH comes back from where the plane crashed. He's all wet because he's been soaked by a wave that was sprayed onto him from the plane. He's lucky to be alive though, because the plane almost crashed on top of him. And we see Amanda and Ruth giving him the 3rd degree. And what's interesting is that after a while they asked Ruth to leave, because Ruth is actually a bit older than the others. I say she's about 18 or 19, older than Amanda and Clay's kids. Although Archie has the hots for her big time, he really does. But Amanda apologizes to GH, and then GH says something. He then says, he then confesses something to her. He says you've got to read the curve, because he's like he's a stockbroker, and he says the markets tell you a lot. I mean, this may be a reference to the put options on 9/11. Do you remember the put option scandal? If you remember that, with the that was actually even the skeptics say that there was something suspicious about the put options on the stock market just before 9/11, because people actually took out a lot of put options on the airlines losing their value. It's like putting a bet on certain shares losing value, and of course they did. Somebody knew in advance. And he says that if you watch the market, George, GH, I still want to call him George because that's his name. If you watch the markets, you can tell the future. If they're steady, that means harmony. But if you see them inching up and down, that means something's going to happen. And he seems to know something. And Amanda indeed turns to George as a source of knowledge. And there's several times she gets frustrated with him because he doesn't seem to know what's happening. She's just, you're the one who knows everything. You're the one with the crystal ball. Tell us. But then George says he grabs her arm like that. She's going to get up and go and get another glass of wine. He grabs her arm and he says, I've got a friend. I won't say his name. I'm paraphrasing now. I won't say his name, but if I told you it, you'd recognize it. He's a major defense contractor. I went round for a party at his house with my wife once, and we all get drunk, and the wife she wants to go home. She's had enough. So she gets a taxi home, and I stay, and he takes me to his study, and he says, I'm off on a trip. And he says, and he says, just an annual meeting of the evil cabal that runs the world. And he laughs because he likes a joke. But then he called up this is one of the reasons that GH has come to the house in the country, not gone back to his flat in the city. It's not just because he's on the 14th floor apparently, and he's got a bad knee, and the lifts aren't working, so he has to go up the stairs. The real reason is, he says, is that this same friend, this defense contractor friend, the famous person, phoned him up just before the shutdown began and asked him to move some money for him. And he says, there's no laughter in this time, but he just says, George, he says, take care of yourself. Be careful, all right? I'm just telling you this. What he's suggesting is something big is about to go down. And he's sort of like warning George in advance. And I suppose just before he gets on his plane and goes off to his bunker in New Zealand. I'll say more about bunkers in New Zealand in a minute, but there's no laughter this time. And then GH says something interesting. He says, people think there's some big Illuminati cabal, deep state in control of the world, but that's simple conspiracy theory stuff. But the truth is much more scary. No one is in control. There's people who have more than others, but all they can expect is a heads up. Now that's paraphrasing, or it's adapted from a concept in the film Don't Look Up, which I reviewed on Her Panmo Voice. There's this famous line in Don't Look Up. Now, Don't Look Up actually is a kind of it's a black comedy. It's a very misanthropic black comedy. But there's one scene in it where someone says to the other, "You think these people are evil?" Talking about the government and people in control. He says, they're not smart enough to be evil. Yeah, he says something big is about to go down. This political elitist, and this is interesting because I'll just show you this. What I found here, because I've actually remember looking at this earlier. I'll just share the screen here. There we are. While the Rest of Us Die. This is a Secret America's Shadow Government, a Vice TV documentary television series. Now, I've not actually seen it. It's behind a paywall, but probably a freebie will leak out at some point. But it's quite a long series. It's like there's 2 seasons of it, and it talks about continuity of government, and it goes on to like doomsday bunkers for the super wealthy and things like that. Excuse me, my nose is itching. And they mentioned the Raven Rock Mountain Complex. I'm familiar with that, yeah. And excuse me, if you look at something, like you go here and you look at, these are videos of this Doomsday Bunkers New Zealand. And I actually watched this on Vice. I won't show you this because I can't stand these bloody strikes. But
share the joy of last-minute deals at Amazon.
Right, this is the 100%, the hunting the 1% doomsday bunkers in New Zealand, right? It's worth watching. This is a freebie. It's 28 minutes long. It's on Vice. I think this is like a kind of short version of While the Rest of Us Die. I mean, While the Rest of Us Die is a pretty grim. It's a pretty grim title, isn't it? But it's true. That's kind of their attitude. It's like, we'll go down there while the rest of the people die. The doomsday will happen. It could be, there's so many things that could cause a doomsday. It could be a nuclear war, could be financial collapse, disease. It could be like a Carrington event, like a micronova, like a big freak solar flare from the sun that destroys all electronics and stuff like that. Could be, the latest thing is the super volcano at Yellowstone. A lot of new bunkers now have filters for filtering out volcanic dust. Well, everyone else chokes on it, but everyone within about 2,000 miles. So that's most of North America would just choke to death on the volcanic dust. But the elite would go into their bunkers and they'd hide out. There'd be an ice age for around 20 years after that as well. But the elites would have time. These bunkers are designed to be lived in for a long time. Look at this. Look at this here. This is a plan. You see, they've got places for growing food. They're comfortable as well. There's There's car park, bedrooms. See, they're quite. This is the outside of them. Excuse me. There's a door to one of them. There's plans here. And look at this. Look, got like a nice swimming pool here. You see? Yeah. You know, these people aren't expected to give up the luxury to which they become accustomed while they're hiding out from the apocalypse. Here's one underneath a posh house. You'll see some. There's actually some of this in the film here. You see, and these big underground places like that. And there's this guy here, Baz. What's his name? Baz McDonald. This is the guy who presents this. He's the journalist. He doesn't look like a journalist, does he? He looks like a kind of like a. He looks like a road mender or a dustman, but he is actually a journalist. And he says here, private property, no trespassing, no shooting. Oh, only shooting if you try to get in, obviously. You see, there's the whole thing. You see, there's, yeah. Pretty grand, yeah. So you have like the outdoors, indoors sorts of things. You can watch movies and stuff like that on TV and watch TV. All recorded, of course. You can't get the internet, and that's another important point I'm going to come back to. But you see, this. I think a lot of this is actually inspired by that. It's actually this film does bring in this concept of the elite bunkers, while the rest, and literally to coin the title, to repeat the title of the documentary, while the rest of us die. And what happens next is they get attacked by some kind of sonic or electromagnetic weapon. And his poor little Rose here, clutching her ears. Yeah, she's. They all get. This happens to all of them. They get attacked by this sonic weapon. And there's also sounds of explosions and air raid sirens as well in some areas. It's just strange. But what's odd about this is, now this is where it differs from a lot of other dystopian fiction. This is Clay here drinking a glass of water from the tap, which is water still running and electricity still on. This house apparently doesn't have a generator. They discuss a generator at some point, and it doesn't have its own water supply. It's not like Erie Cushlin, the house I stayed in on the Isle of Man, because that gets its water from a well, and it has a septic tank for the drainage and a generator for the electricity. Here's the this is the kind of life they're living. It's not so bad. So even though the communications are down, the power and water infrastructure is still on. Indeed, Ruth is always making comments about power plants. Now this is interesting. There's this scene where they're trying to drive away. They want to go to Ruth's sister's and to Amanda's sister's house, and they come across the roadblock by these Teslas. Oh, I wonder what Elon thinks of this. Presumably he gave permission. But these are like autonomous Teslas. And she says to Clay, you look after the kids, I'll go and have a look. Again, she's bossing him around. She gets out of the car. And before you know it, other cars start appearing and crashing into the ones you see there. And they have to get their own car out of the way. And Clay's going, oh, we should flag those people down. And she says, there are no people in it. What's happened is the autonomous Teslas have all gone crazy and they've just started driving randomly. Again, no human override, which is not realistic unless this is the future. There's a whole series of scenes where the characters are sort of getting to know each other a bit better. It's like, I don't know if you've ever seen the film California with a K. It's got Brad Pitt and David Duchovny and I can't remember the two women in it, but there's that line where they say, when you first meet a stranger, you all you see is how different you are. But after a while, you start to realize how much you've got in common. And this is kind of like that. I mean, there's a scene where Ruth is sort of like, she's sitting by the fire pit in the garden with Clay, and she starts to be a bit nicer than she normally is because she's a very belligerent person, very belligerent and very, very sarcastic. I mean, I was on my guard for cultural Marxism, as I've said many times. It's one of these things you can't escape. I mean, it's almost every production has to have cultural Marxist themes. And from what I gather, for the book, which is based on, the book is very politically correct. And of course, would it have been picked up by a major publisher, an option for a major studio adaptation if it wasn't? But to be honest, I didn't detect anything excessive or too obvious. Ruth often makes very often bitchy statements. I wouldn't get on with Ruth if I knew her. I wouldn't get on with I don't think I'd get on with any of these characters actually, except maybe GH and the kids, But Ruth is like always sarcastic. She's always making sort of like, oh, you don't like us because we're black, and sort of hints at Amanda and Clay. And at one point she says to her dad, I know it's quite a touching scene because they're sleeping in the basement and she wants to get into bed with him, and this is something she probably hasn't done for years since she was a little kid. But she says, Dad, I'm scared. He says, we can't trust white people. And that's about as bad as it gets, I must say. I was expecting much worse, because she expresses a lot of anti-white sentiments, and this is probably the worst one she made. But though she accuses Clay of trying to seduce her, which is not true. You can see, from the viewer's point of view, you never see this. And that's one of the things I suppose I found a bit annoying. But anyway, this is Clay. This is the scene I mean. Here's Clay and Ruth sort of like getting to know each other. They're vaping because he's a smoker, and she's letting him share her vape and stuff like this, and they have this sort of long, intimate discussion. And indeed, Amanda and GH do the same. They sort of like even dance to old jazz songs and things like this as well. So there is some flirtation between the two of them. It's like there is a little bit between Amanda and GH, but it's nothing major. It's nothing what I would call it's not like the way Ruth portrays it. All right, this is an interesting shot. Then you see this shot. This will amuse the Apollo detectives no end, right? There you go. The Earth with the sun behind it. And this is Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed, and the flag is now a dusty old rag. Although that flag, if it existed, wouldn't even be there, because this fabric would have long ago worn away through micrometeorite impacts. So even if it's there, which of course it's not, as you know, if you watch the Apollo Detectives, like the one I've just uploaded, a new Apollo Detectives video, as you know. Now, I won't show you all of this. It's a bit horrible, but Archie gets sick. And this is when he first wakes up and realizes he's ill. And then he starts throwing up blood and his teeth start falling out. I won't show you the bit where that happens. You can watch it in the movie if you want to. Now, GH says it's Havana syndrome, which now, this is interesting because what's causing it? Because you think to yourself, well, is it the sonic weapon or the electromagnetic weapon? Probably not, because all of them are affected by that, but Archie's the only one who gets ill. Now, in the previous scene, he gets bitten by a tick. You see him being bitten by a tick, and it may be that. It may be some form of Lyme disease. But Havana syndrome, this is where the US Embassy in Havana, Cuba, was attacked by a. Here we go. Oh, see, I've already got something. You see, you look, Havana syndrome. This is what you get. You start. This is interesting. This shows you how popular this film is and how current and how trending. I start googling Havana syndrome, and I get teeth fall out, and it says "Leave the world behind." Danny revealed that microwave radiation was beamed out through sound, which led many people to losing their teeth and falling sick. This was actually GH who did that, not Danny's a character who's going to come up. It could have, so the sound could have been causing that. Leave the world behind. What happened to Archie's teeth? It's interesting, this look. Why were Archie's teeth falling out? It could be due to the word bug bite or Havana syndrome being exposed to the noises. Well, I think of the six main characters, Archie Sanford suffered the most. Yeah, I think it must have been the bug, because he's the only one who got sick. They couldn't confirm, and they were you don't find out exactly what happens to him. You don't find out exactly how this ends, but they do manage to get medication for him through a different process. And it's actually this guy here. This is a character called Danny, played by Kevin Bacon. There he is. And he's like this, I suppose, is taking the mickey a little bit. If this was a British film, you'd say that. he's kind of American survivalist, typical American survivalist. And of course, these characters come up all the time in British comedies, like Paul, because taking the mickey out of the Americans. But Danny's a friend of GH, and he's been preparing for this day for years. I mean, he first appears early on in the film, where Amanda sees him loading up his truck with bottles of water and canned food. And she says, he knew. But then GH says, oh, don't worry, he always does that. Funny thing about Danny, he's all the moral dilemmas that the others are facing. Clay not picking up that Hispanic woman from leaving her by the side of the road. Danny has integrated all those moral dilemmas already, and he has developed this ruthless survival of the fittest attitude. Even Charles wouldn't come close to that. Even Charles, Charles. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, man. Survival of the fittest. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Yeah, man. It's the Lord of Jungle, and I'm a predator stalking my prey, man. I promised myself that I would never do that impression again. Oh, dear. Anyway. Right. Yes. You get the picture. Yeah. And what they do is he's basically, what happens is they go up to the house and he's behaving totally different. And he says, and GH says, Danny, you're my friend. And he says, George, things have changed. Don't you realize what's happening? And then eventually they do persuade him to hand over some medication to help Archie, although no one knows what's wrong with Archie. So I don't know how they decide I don't know how the hell they decide exactly what to give him. Anyway, GH then starts to just distrust Clay. And he says, Clay, because he starts to really take on board what Danny said about everyone turning against each other. He says, we need to get to this bunker, because Danny actually reveals that he has a neighbor. Well, it was actually the neighbors of them both. They're called the Thorns, which is interesting because that's a name from the Omen, Damien Thorn, remember? And he says, we need to get to their bunker, as if they're not in it, just to see if they're in it. And he says, my friend, and he then tells Clay about the same friend that he told Amanda about. He says, I've got this friend here. And this defense contractor friend, very famous person. If I told you his name, you'd recognize it. And he told me that there's three stages to an attack. The first thing you do, isolation. That's where you switch off all the communication so everyone's isolated from everyone else. Then synchronized chaos. So you break down the infrastructure, then people start attacking. And then coup and civil war and collapse. Well, the plan is to make the target nation do the work for you. Citizens turn on each other. Infrastructure destroys itself. Indeed, these are real military strategies that are used. And I think that Leave the World Behind is centered on a very important point, and that is ordered civilized society is a very fragile thing. It can collapse very easily into barbarism, and it can happen almost instantaneously after the loss of some infrastructure. It doesn't have to be everything. As you saw, even the water and electricity is still on, but they lose communication. And I think I think Clay and Amanda's family don't really appreciate that. They don't really understand that. Neither does GH or Ruth to begin with. They don't really understand. They still see this as, well, we're on vacation and things will be better soon. Oh, well, we want our money back if you're going to stay here. Things like that. Now, this idea, this collapse into barbarism, is not an original idea in fiction, but it is different in certain ways. Now, it is different in this case. What's different in this case is that it's the confusion, the isolation is pretty much shared by the viewer. The viewer, essentially, it's almost like a POV kind of experience watching this film, because it's almost like you're there with them. You don't know anything more about what's going on than they do. But one thing that becomes clear is this: It appears that this collapse is not because of some accident. It's not because of some foreign adversarial ambush. It appears to be something done on purpose by a faction of the political class. It literally is a coup d'etat, an internal conflict, not an external enemy of the United States causing this. As I said, leaflets are dropped claiming that it's an external enemy. In one area in New York, they say it's like Iranians. In California, it's Koreans. No doubt in other parts of the country, they'll be dropping leaflets in Chinese, in Russian. It's all disinformation. The reality is that it's a faction of the political class within the United States itself that is doing this. That's the interesting thing. And you get your only view of the outside world here. This is the only view you get of the outside world in the entire program. You finally, what happens is the camera moves up. It's obviously a camera on a drone, and this is New York City here, and there's explosions. You hear gunfire. There's helicopters. You hear jets roaring, sirens wailing, things like that. All-out war in the city. That's the only view you get of anything beyond the local area. And then finally, the final scene is very interesting. It's this. It then switches to Rose. The whole thing then switches to Rose. Rose runs away, and she finds her. She goes to the Thorns house, these neighbors, and she finds the Doomsday Bunker. This is her finding the Doomsday Bunker, and she finds lots of food in the house. And then she goes down to the Doomsday Bunker, and there's lots of DVDs. And she finds Friends, and then she puts the DVD on. She finally watches the episode of Friends that she's been desperate to watch this whole time. Bless her heart. Yeah, she does that. Now, I do think it's strange because what this film is, you get to see exactly what the filmmakers capture, what they want. They portray what they want to portray. What they want to portray is the way the characters see the whole situation. I'm just going through my notes, checking I've covered everything. This is how the characters see the situation. You see, this is their perspective. And well, what happens next? I think you want to know what happens next. Okay, Rose. The others are sort of like looking for Rose, and they've just managed to get medication for Archie. They're trying to think about getting into a hospital, stuff like that. You see explosions in the city, stuff like that. What happens next? Well, nothing happens next. It's impossible to answer it because there is no next. And we will talk about this in the live stream because the story literally ends there. It looks like, to me, it has the feel of like a part one of a serial, but it's not. It's not. That's the end of the story. It reminds me very much of those. I don't know if you remember when I was a kid at school. They used to show us videos, and they used to show us in my English classes. They used to show us these little videos of a story, a very simple little story. It would end very suddenly on a cliffhanger. And the idea was for the lesson that then the English teacher would then say, would then encourage the children to make up their own story about what happens next. And this is a bit like that. The viewer is left to imagine what happens next. And one thing I can see straight away is this whole catastrophe that's happened is intended to demolish the existing world order and build it up into a new world order. And it's interesting that there's a wall picture, actually, just before Rose goes into the bunker. There's a wall picture, and it says "Hope begins in the dark." And I bet you, if I Google "Hope begins in the dark," I will find something to do. I will find something to do with this film. Let's just have a look. I'll leave the word behind. Hope begins in the dark. Leave the world behind. Third one down. You see what I mean? Leave the world behind. Oh, it's actually on the Netflix website here. Oh, here we go. The one with the apocalypse inside the leaving. All right. Oh, this will be an interesting read. Can I rent the house from Leave the World Behind? Oh, it's a real house, is it? Why are the deer acting? What is the noise? Why do Archie's teeth fall out? Did you spot the Mr. Robot Easter egg? No, I didn't spot everything. Why is Friends in Leave the World Behind? Oh, it should be interesting, actually. All right, I'll read that later. I'll read that before the live stream. But yeah, basically, I think at the end, the message for me at the end is if you love something, like if you love the comedy series Friends, like Rose does, don't rely on the internet. Get the DVDs. Morgoth said this. Get the DVDs in of it, of all your favorite movies. Why do you think I've got this big pile behind me? I don't think you can see it with the. You can't see it with the. Or you can maybe just make it out with the. I've got this big. Well, you know what's behind me. You know I've got this big pile of DVDs. That's why I have it. I don't rely on bloody online streaming services. I don't rely on them. They could go down at any time, and or they can be edited, like Kindle with your books. Always get like paperbacks. My own books are only available as paperbacks. Don't rely on online stuff. Get DVDs of your favorite movies. Get paperback books of your favorite books. Because if you get Roald Dahl, if you love Roald Dahl, well, too bad, because they've all been edited for political correctness. So yeah, I'm just going to go through all of my notes again. Now, this isn't the only film of its type. There's another one called Blackout. I don't know if you. I'll mention this. We'll no doubt come up with this in the. I'll just go to the video I made of it. Here we go. Let's just go to the video. I actually made a video. This became quite notorious in the truth movement because it's one of the people in it is played by Charlie Veitch. He kind of plays himself. You can find this on. Have I got it? Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, you can find this on Japan My Voice Blackout. This is my review of it, and it's on YouTube. It was on YouTube. Is it still on YouTube? Yeah, it still is. Okay. Now Blackout is a bit like. It's a bit like this one. It is similar in many ways to Leave the World Behind, except it's much darker. It's much more visceral. It's basically it's a dystopian found footage drama in a world in which, but it's far more extreme because in this particular situation, all the electricity goes down, not just the communications. All electricity goes off. There's no power. There's no lighting. There's nothing. And as a result, the waterworks shuts down and things like that. Now, you never find out exactly why that is. There are many things that could cause that. Like I said, it could be a cyber attack, like in Leave the World Behind. It could be a cyber attack. It could be a war. It could be some kind of, it could be some kind of natural disaster, like I say, a micronova, a Carrington event, a freak radiation burst from the sun. This happened before. This happened before there were major electronics and they fried telegraph wires. If that happened today, unless we found some way to protect the grid, maybe power it down or something like that in a coordinated manner, it would fry our electronics, which would be far worse. Things like that. But anyway, Blackout it's interesting because it has a lot of the same themes. It has this theme about how fragile civilized society is, and about how we all behave in an orderly way, but if you take away the infrastructure, it's back to the law of the jungle. And Charles would be in his paradise. Slaxer would love it. Yeah. But we are terrifyingly close to a child's paradise at any point. We are. Yeah. I mean, I think it was even Napoleon himself who said, every society is 3 meals away from revolution. And he could have easily just said collapse. But anyway, what I'll do is, I don't think I need to put a notice up. My nose is itching again. I won't bother putting like a notice. What I will do, if that's all right with you guys, is I'll simply arrange a live stream for the future and just set that up. And so take this video as the notice for the upcoming live stream. It'll probably be Wednesday. It might be Thursday actually, because I'm not doing the Hapanwo show now until the new year, so it may be Thursday even. Anyway, I'll put it up on the channel. But anyway, that's my review of reviews. That's my word on my opinion on what everyone else has an opinion on, and everyone else is talking about, which is Leave the World Behind. This new movie. It's on Netflix, and it's also in a few other places as well. you know. All right, guys. So thank you very much, all of you, for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.